ending. This format is a bit confusing. All the noise that you don't hear because you have earphones, I hear. So if you hear me I'm losing focus for a second, bear with me. If you can do something like this, it will cheer me up. Thank you. And so I studied computer engineering, and I was working in Intel. And when I graduated, I moved to Berlin and started working as a backend developer. And in my second year, I attended Google I/O. And in Google I/O, they had a workshop where they gave you a mobile phone, and the mobile phone had an app that had this feature that was showing how much data do you consume. And then it was showing, then we were asked to do all kinds of tasks. For example, find instructions how to go somewhere, or find the translation for something, how to use a certain fertilizer, and so on. And then we were all asked, how much data did you consume? And we all said 50 megabytes, 70 megabytes. And then we were shown what can you buy for the price of this data in different countries. And the things that they show were, for example, you can buy food for a week, or you can buy a festive meal for your family for one of the holidays in countries like India, or in places in South America and in Africa and so on. And that left a very strong impression on me. And it's not like I was not aware that the internet is a problem in developing countries. We all know that. But once you face it so closely, it leaves a different experience. And so it tickled my brain, and I went back from the conference, continued my job, but couldn't really be at complete peace about this. So I started researching a bit, and I started reading a bit more, and I talked to my classmate. And we started brainstorming. We're both software developers, so there may be an interesting software solution to this. We should give it a try from our take. And so we kept working in our day jobs, both as developers, he in Tel Aviv, me in Berlin, and we started coming up with this nice idea, and we formed it into an app. And we were doing this during the weekends and in the evenings, while during the day we were still working. And fast forward 3 years to the beginning of this year, we both quit our jobs. I'm moving to Nairobi with this app that we had ready, and our adventure begins. And fast forward a few more months, we fail. Things did not work well. We're out of money. We didn't have enough users, and we had to shut down the company and go back and kind of see what went wrong. And in this talk, I want to share with you all the learnings that I made while preparing myself, and then all the failures we've been through. And I hope that by the end of this talk, for one or two of you, it will tickle enough that if you go home now, you'll also start thinking about more interesting things. And maybe one of you here will come up with the next awesome solution to this problem that internet is not available everywhere in developing countries as it is here. And as we came here to learn, let's start with some geography. This is the world map, and we all know it. And we are in Milan, and this is Africa as we know it, Asia, North America, South America, and this is not the only world map, because the world is round, and if you take a 3D sphere and you project it onto a 2D sphere, it means you're going to have to lose some data, right? We all know this. And so here are some more ways of projecting this data into 2 dimensions and losing different types of information. You can read about all of them in XKCD number 977. Pretty funny, very educating. Or you can embrace the Flat Earth Society, and this will be your world map. Problem solved. You should join them. They have members from all around the globe. But if you're not convinced in joining them, let's look at this projection. It's called the Gauss-Peters projection. It was invented about 300 years after the map that I showed you before, and the information that is stored, that is presented correctly here, is the size of the continents. Africa, Europe, kind of different from this one. The information that is shown correctly here is the shape of the continents. And the fact that this one is the most popular map and not this one may or may not be related to the fact that most of the world maps are printed here. And it doesn't look so nice on this map. Could also be related to another thing, I don't know. And one thing that I want you to notice here is the size of this continent. It's huge. How huge? Let's talk some numbers. If you take the population of North America and of Europe, it's just slightly more than the population of Africa. Same goes for area. Practically, if you take North America and Europe, you get only a bit more than Africa. That's how big it is. And two interesting numbers that I want you to have in mind is the comparison between the official languages and the languages in use. While the difference between North America and Europe is not that much, the difference here is huge. And the reason that it varies so much is also because linguistic researchers are still discussing what is a dialect versus what is a language. And just have this in mind. We're going to go back to this later. Last slide about how big Africa is. We take the continent, right? We put inside the United States with Alaska and Hawaii. We take China, we take Japan and India. Then we add the UK, Eastern Europe, Italy, Switzerland, Germany, France, Spain, Portugal, and we still are left with space. The continent is huge. And this is the first takeaway that I want you to have from this talk. And throughout this talk, you'll see this takeaway box, and this is something that I want you to take away from this presentation. There'll be lots of learning. There will be a summary slide. There are all kinds of initiatives to overcome the problem of internet that range from software solutions to hardware solutions and to aerial solutions that are pretty cool. And next, I want to talk with you about why is there a problem in the internet? How did that even happen? What went wrong in the way? And I'm going to show a timeline, and it's going to be a fairly intense one, full of numbers, full of data. Bear with me, I will need your attention. So we compare globally and what happens inside of Africa. And we start in the 70s. Globally, in the USA, the ARPANET set 70 nodes that are communicating between each other and being in use by the US military. Not much going on in Africa. Moving on to the first part of the 80s, the UN sets up an organization that has the purpose of bringing internet to Africa. Globally, TCP/IP is being set up. The first ISP is being created. Then we move to the second half of the decade, and we see AOL and the first personal computer show up. And your mom starts yelling at you, hey, get off the phone, get off the internet, I need to make a phone call. Globally, some networking system in South Africa. Moving on. 18 institutes in Africa can communicate now with each other. Globally, we get the World Wide Web. Then we get Hotmail, Google, PayPal, and we get ICANN. Now everybody can have themselves a cool domain. In Africa, internet connection shows up. See, the gap is being formed. And it doesn't get better, because while globally we get Skype and Pirate Bay and we start exhausting the internet bandwidth and you start getting heavy traffic, the first major internet connection just hits the continent. And smartphones show up, and this time it's not just outside of Africa, but they also get to the continent and get spread pretty nicely. And this is a positive change. Also, Afrinic gets the license to start registering African IPs, domains, and you can get all kinds of cool .Africa, for example, and so on. And globally, Reddit, YouTube, Snapchat, Coursera. So what's the challenge outside of Africa becomes what's your interesting product more than what's your technical challenge. While still just in this decade, more than 0.5% reaches high-speed network. Did you all catch up how this is just being formed crazily? I will need your attention even more. The next slide is going to be similar. There will be more numbers and there will be another timeline, and we will look at the number of the private internet users. And while it starts actually not that different in the beginning of the 90s, this goes really slowly while this is just booming. And another thing that I want you to know is the comparison of the milestones of things that happened in 2005. Globally, we have the first billion people connected, while in sub-Saharan connections, more than 5% started being even connected. How big of a gap is that? And if we take these numbers and translate them to a graph, it looks bad. It will look a bit better if we add this interesting number of mobile subscriptions. And suddenly, both numbers are high, and suddenly the gap is not that big. And this is interesting because it means that maybe all the buzzwords you hear about being mobile first and how all the technology that you know formed slowly goes into your phone and starts replacing, maybe not full-time but part-time, your TV, your computer, already replaced your radio probably. The situation, I would not say it's the same in Africa. I would say that it's not mobile first, but it's pretty much mobile only. And from my experience, from what I saw there, while you can find people with laptops, maybe not so much with desktops in different African countries, you don't find many of them. Most of your users, if you decide to go to Africa, will have only their mobile phone. You cannot plan on them coding from their computer, you cannot plan on them designing from their computer, or even just consuming movies, TV series, talking to their friends. It's all just mobile. And you can ask me, hey Natalie, what are the common apps in Africa? And I can say that from what I see, it's those. Let's go over them. So financial, yes, there is lots of interesting finance going on because banks are not very common. And we will go in depth to that during the talk. Medical, educational, all parts of NGOs and lots of interesting things that are going on. They need good people. They need smart developers. If you have the time and you want to volunteer and make good use of your developing skills, please consider speaking to an NGO and say, hey, I can offer 1 day a week or 1 week a year, or maybe I can come for 1 year and you can help me. You can make great change doing those things. Sharing economy and transportation. Uber is a big deal in Kenya. We will also go over that in detail later. Weather and agriculture are important because lots of agriculture is going on in African countries, and being more prepared is of course the best way to utilize your resources smartly. And then entertainment and social media, everybody have Facebook. Most of the people also have Twitter. Interestingly enough, few people have an email account. And religious is definitely the most interesting thing that I saw. So most of my friends have this app that once you click on it, it will start reading out for you verses from the Bible or the Quran. Never saw this outside of Africa. So let's talk some more about apps. This slide is for screenshots that I took from the website AppTrace, and it shows the top downloaded apps per country, per app store. And I guess you cannot read, but you can definitely see the logos even from there. Nothing interesting. We see Instagram, Facebook, shopping, Messenger, some games. Same for the Apple Store. And then this is in the US. And in Italy, it was interesting to see how different it is that Android users are heavy shoppers. And, well, to be honest, Apple users as well. So you all people like your online shopping, huh? Cool. So that was actually a warm-up exercise. The next slide will be the same, but for Kenya and for Congo. Take a second. Guess, what do you think you'll see there? Okay, first question. Which flag is which? Who thinks this is Kenya? Raise your hand. Who thinks this is Congo? Raise your hand. You guys know your geography. Good job. This is indeed Congo, Kenya. For those who were not sure, watch Fun with Flags. Awesome show. So what do we see in Kenya? The Play Store users. There is the one we recognize, WhatsApp, Facebook, Facebook Lite, Truecaller, Messenger. People like to communicate, no big deal. Let's talk about the ones that you maybe not recognize their logos. We have Viusasa, we have Branch, we have Mkopo Rahisi, is how I knew it. And those are apps that, this app is basically to kind of like get news about celebrities, gossips, videos, maybe short interviews, media app, you would say. And this app is loans. What you do, you register there with your Facebook account, and then you can get immediately credit, not too much, few dollars to a few tens of dollars, into your mobile account, on the format of which we will talk later. But basically, this is kind of like a mobile ATM app. Apple Store. We have Facebook Messenger, we have YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Messenger. So YouTube is kind of weird, right? Didn't I just tell you about internet problems and so on, and then people have YouTube? It's fairly data heavy. Am I lying? No. More interesting apps that are local is My Safaricom, which is the most popular way to get data, to get internet credit, and Taxify, which is the local competitor of Uber. The reason you don't see Taxify in the Android, I will tell you about it in a second, actually. Let's look at Congo. So what we see in the Android store for Congo, we have Instagram, Facebook Lite, Messenger, Facebook, nothing, no big surprises. And the Apple store for Congo, what do we see there? Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, video player. So it's again this weird pattern. What's up that apps that are data heavy show up on the most downloaded apps? You ask me this. And well, I want to ask you back. We are looking at the Apple Store in Congo. How many people in Congo own an iPhone? Not so many. So while this information is correctly representing things, it may not be the main data source you want to use to get this information. And Android is probably the more popular one. And if you look at this in this point of view, you can kind of look that this is more local apps and this is more foreigner apps. I hope this makes more sense for you now. And well, for fun, let's look at the same slide for Japan and for Vietnam. I hope we can all agree that this is Japan, right? So what do we see in Vietnam? We see some gaming apps. We see Facebook, Facebook Lite, Messenger. Magic how it's global, right? Everywhere. And for the Apple users, we see some games, more YouTube, and again, Facebook. And in Japan, it's really interesting because almost none of the logos I don't recognize. Sure, I cannot read because it's all Japanese. And while this is out of our scope, it gives this interesting lesson that the Japanese app market is very closed. If you want to go there, this is actually not the place to think global. Go with local developers, go with local designers, and answer local needs. But switching back to Africa, let's talk about transportation. Who remembers this logo that we just saw? These guys guys are called Taxify. This is an Estonian app that exists in several African countries and in London and I think in one more place. Essentially, this is Uber's competitor, and you can see that if you look for Taxify, the Uber website shows up on Google. And an interesting thing that goes on is how do you call a driver in Kenya? Or maybe we go one step back, why would I call a driver? So let's say I'm in Kenya and I want to commute from one place to another. What are my options? I can walk, but the pavements are not so pleasant, most of them made of sand, and if it's more than 20 minutes, I probably don't want to walk. It's really hot there. I can hop into this public transportation equivalent that's called matatu. This is essentially a station wagon that is very decorated, has blue and red lights and lots of fun drawings on them and so on. And they would always pull over on the leftmost side of the highway, and you have to hop out, hop in real quick. There's no official route, but if you want to ask somebody, how do I get from this place to that place, find a local, they all know. Still didn't figure out how. You can rent a car and drive, but you don't want to do it. Not only because drivers in Kenya, as anywhere in the world, are crazy, they're even driving on the wrong side of the road, just like British people. So it kind of leaves you with the option of Uber or Taxify. And so I want to go from my home to, let's say, visit a friend. I open the app, I type my address, I type my friend's address, I hit search driver. And then the app notifies me, driver found, and then I'm getting a phone call. Hello, hi, I'm your driver. Nice to meet you. Where are you? I am at Fayetteville Estates. Can you see this on the map? Okay, I'm coming. Okay, getting ready, getting my jacket, heading out. I get the notification, your driver is here, and then I'm getting a phone call. Hi, it's me again. Hello, I'm here. Oh, okay, I'm heading out. Hopping in the car. Hi, how are you doing? Good. We're already good friends by now. It's like the third time we're talking. And so he's asking me, and where are you going? I'm going to my friend. This is the address. Okay, and how do you get there? So you can tell I'm not a local, right? Maybe I'm living there long enough to actually know the route, but you're the driver here, right? So you're the one who should be driving. So I'm telling, just follow the route. But then he doesn't have his data on. And then we start this negotiation. Maybe you can navigate me? Nah. Maybe you can open Google Maps and tell me where to go. I can. I don't want to. And so usually it ends up with the driver pulling his app, this upper bar, activating data for the Google Maps or for the Uber or for a Taxify app, and then he starts driving. And I was really curious to see what goes on. So many times I'm sitting next to the driver and I am looking at the phone. And I've already seen drivers that were looking at the map, looking at me and telling me, in this roundabout I take left, right? I'm telling him, no, you see that the blue line continues straight, so you should follow it, right? Okay. So in the end, I usually do reach my destination and everything is fine. But the reason I tell you the story is for your takeaway, which is users are not going to use the app in the way you want to. And it can go to the extreme in different countries, different cultures, different continents, like I told you now. And, you can assume that Uber has some of the best engineers in the Bay Area and some of the best UX, UI designers who thought really well of the user experience, who's just going to trash when you do it this way with the instant phone calls. And if you decide to take your app or to build an app, make sure that you have the UI and UX planned with a local designer and then test it again, because the use of it is going to be different. Next example, Share It. Anybody here knows this app? This app is used to share data over Bluetooth, and this is going to be your main app store. users who recommend each other on an app, they're not, if I'm getting the recommendation and I'm a person who lives in Kenya, I'm not going to go to the Play Store, type the name of the app, and download. What I'm going to do is tell to my friend who recommended me about this app, open your share it and send me the APK. And that's how I download the app. And this is my one and only update I will ever have of the app. And this is a problem because as app developers, we're all used to having lots of information coming from the different SDKs that are analyzing or from the Google Developers Console. But if the user skips the Google part, it doesn't exist. I don't get correct information about how many users I have. I never get crash reports. I never get the distribution of the operating systems. I never get the user journey. And it's a big problem. And this year in Google I/O, I went to the app team and I said, hey, the user count that I have on my internal apps database is not the same as I see in the Play Store. In the Play Store, it's way lower. What do I do? And they said, yeah, we know we have the same problem. So I'm introducing you this problem, not with a suggestion for a solution, because there is no good solution. But maybe one of you here can come up with something nice. And please don't say, hey, you can just use the SDK of this company or that company, because you want your app to be light on data, for the reason that we will talk in a minute. So the last thing you want for your 5 megabytes app is a 40 megabytes SDK. If you come up with a solution, please come up with a lightweight one. M-Pesa. Let's talk money. Who knows them? So the official definition of what they do is mobile phone-based money transfer and financing service. And essentially, this is your bank. As a Kenyan person, you are very likely not to have a bank account for whatever reason, whether if you don't have one in your village or you were just rejected from one because there's no information about you, about your credit history, about somebody from family. It doesn't exist. So most people, what they do is they buy a SIM card from Safaricom that has on the SIM card an app by M-Pesa. Notice this is not an app that comes from the Play Store on your phone. This is an app that comes with your SIM. So it means that even if you have this old Nokia, you have this app. And what you can do with this app is receive money, you can send money, you can pay, whether you're in that Uber or Taxify, or if you're in the market, or if you're paying for a service. And people get salaries to their M-Pesa account, and this developed over time to such a sophisticated financial system that you can buy government bonds, you can buy insurance, and you can buy savings, all using Safaricom. And M-Pesa is one provider. They're the largest in Kenya, and they're the largest in some other countries, including some Asian and Balkan countries, interestingly enough. But they do have competitors, of course. They're doing super well. 60 million euros revenue this year. They exist for 10 years. Their average user makes a transaction every 3 days. And they have 130,000 physical agents, which is kind of like this kiosk that somebody comes with their ID and then they can either deposit or get money. And this is your banking system. And the takeaway that I want you to have from this slide is that if you have finance handling in your app, don't think PayPal, don't think credit cards, don't think bank accounts, don't think of all the solutions that depend on them. Think M-Pesa or the local equivalent. And this is how M-Pesa looks like. This is the app interface if you have a smartphone. If you don't have a smartphone and you have a Nokia, all you do is type a USSD code, which is the *# sequence of numbers, another pound, and then you start interacting with the app. You send money, you receive money, and so on. And you get your confirmation over SMS. This is how you get credit to your phone. There's no prepaid, there's no pay-as-you-go kind of monthly payment. You just get credit and you charge it in your app. And it's interesting because you can buy credit for 3 months, 1 month, 1 week, 1 day, few hours, or 1 hour. Yes, people pay under $1 and they get a huge amount of data that is only valid for 1 hour. And in this way, you group some friends, you chip in, and then you have Skype, unlimited pretty much, for 1 hour, and you use it to speak with many people, whoever you want to talk to. And it's really useful for the users who do this because they save money and get practically the same internet we have. But it's really terrible if you're on the other side and you want to track the users. You cannot make a persona or identify a user when you have 5 users on the same device, same app, same time. Pretty much impossible to target and separate. And that's another challenge. This is how a physical kiosk looks like. And there's the dude here who is either depositing or getting money. This is how it looks like when it's part of a large supermarket. So you just go to the cashier and you either deposit money or withdraw money or just pay for your grocery shopping with M-Pesa. And even in the largest markets, really, really street markets, you can pay with this. And the takeaway, second takeaway from the M-Pesa that I want you to have is that find your target group wisely. The persona and the target group are obviously different if you start characterizing them and aiming at people from African countries versus people from European or American or other Western countries. But another thing that you can do is not target at one small specific group, but do like a one-stop shop in the same way that M-Pesa did. They serve the people who live in skyscrapers, the people who live in slums, people who live in villages. Kids can use it, adults can use it. It's just one solution for everyone. And it's pretty incredible because Africa is a very varied continent. You know, when people say, I develop for Africa, it's like you say, I develop for the world. You can have something that works for everything, but it's so different because it's so huge. And it has so much rich cultural history that it's sometimes hard. And so my friend and I decided we go for Kenya. And we started a company named Konta, and this is what we do. Essentially, this is a platform that you take your store to an online way with the basic tools that you have, which is this very basic smartphone and a very limited data plan. And here is how the UI should have looked like. And so we designed the UI, we designed a very basic activity, so you can buy stuff, you can sell stuff, and you can chat. That's all. And we felt really brave, and we're like, let's go to Africa, what can possibly go wrong? First thing that went wrong, downloading the app. As you can see, it's just 3 megabytes, not that much. And many people would not download the app, either because they will not agreeing to allocate their share of data for this, because it didn't convince them. And this is fair, because the average data plan per person is around 300 megabytes a month. Now remember that most people don't have Wi-Fi at work. They don't have Wi-Fi at home. So those 300 megabytes is all you have for the entire month. Probably all the Facebook browsing you did this morning when you woke up was more than that. This is what people have for the entire month, which is around 10 megabytes a day. Saying, give me a third of that for my app, not worth it, and that's fair. So what I ended up doing was tethering a hotspot from my phone. And still, it got stuck at this because the connection was so bad. And, well, takeaway, try to find a smart way to be able to distribute your app. Maybe this shared thing, not the worst idea. At least it's always connected. Next thing, it opens up and it crashes. And I don't know why, because this device is called Tango. Never heard it before I came to Africa. It's not Samsung, not iPhone, not Huawei, Tango. And they're doing so well in Kenya that they have a 10-story building with glass facade and so on, and they're very popular. But this device, if you start looking at Stack Overflow and crash messages, you're not going to see it really. So also don't expect on getting those notifications from your developer's console, because we already said it's not really there. So just prepare for kind of bumpy road. Another interesting thing that happens with those devices is that the sensors are not behaving as expected. Obviously, the person was online because they just downloaded the app, but then they opened it, and the first thing they see is offline. And I couldn't debug that, and I still, until today, I was not able to help this person because the app just shows it's disconnected, and what you're gonna do. Hope one of you will bump into this and will actually put a useful answer on Stack Overflow. Please do this. Next thing, images, right? They say put images because it will cause less confusion in comparison to words, but images will not download. Or so you say, let's put a default image, but then it's gonna look that bad. So the takeaway from this too is make sure that your app looks really good without an image. Have it look good with image as well, but default should be without an image. Or use logos, or use text like we used here. And here, this is the store management UI, and it says manage stock, right, if you want to add and remove items. But the person who was playing with it and asked me, hey, how do I put items into the store now, looking at this and didn't know what to do. So edit items solved this problem. And the takeaway you have from this slide is that find your words in a smart way. Ask local people what words make sense to them. Symbols. You'd think symbols would solve the problem, but the person who was looking at this and asked me how do I rename my program did not think of this. The pencil was not connected to their mind to the idea of editing something. So again, localization challenge. And to wrap up, promised you a summary of all the takeaways that I want you to have. Here it is. Internet is not available everywhere. You are going to a mobile-only world where the demand is different, the use of your app is going to be different, and the distribution of your app is going to be in different tools, not the Play Store. Finance is going to be handled differently, and the variety of people who are going to use it will be different. The data is scarce. Not only it's limited, it's also not available everywhere. App Store is not your best friend. Operating systems and devices are not always known and not always debuggable at this point. And images, languages, and symbols can cause confusion. And to wrap up, I want to say that yes, it's challenging, yes, it's a bit scary, but I hope that for at least a few of you, I didn't scare you as much as I triggered your curiosity, and that you'll go back home and research a bit more and maybe find something interesting and do really cool stuff. I hope to see one of you next year on the stage telling the cool stuff that they did this year. Thank you.